How you gonna teach a youth if you don't know yourself? Do you believe what they teach in school? Cause there's a lot of things that they can't really prove. If you knew the lies, would it change your moves? And would the things you do still really be cool? Because if your family came on the ship, that means all your history has been stripped. Then that's when all the lies begin. How we playing the game that we can't really win? Just keep it real, man. Ask yourself, if you don't know yourself, you don't know your history. It's like the blind leading the blind. What we gonna do for the next generation?
Welcome to another episode of the Love Podcast. I have Kashi Money, one of my good friends here in Puerto Viejo, who's super interesting and has been here for, how long have you been here?
3 years.
3 years. I've been here 6, so I've been here like around 2.5, 3 years ago. And there's just so many interesting things that she brings to this town, and I just wanted to talk to her about it and introduce her to you guys. And so tell me about like initially where you're from, and what started you on the path, of spirituality and healing people's sexual traumas and ayahuasca and all these different aspects of your life.
Okay, so where did it all start? I'm one of these people who, I feel like I've been on the path since forever, I didn't really have one of these, big awakenings at a certain point. I just basically, my mom showed me poetry that I wrote when I was 5 years old that was all about this kind of spiritual poetry about the sun and the earth and the moon, and I just kind of came in with that. So yeah, I was really hungry for spirituality. When I was about 8, I got really into Christianity because that was just what was available. So I read the Bible a lot when I was 8. And
you're obviously.
Oh yeah, I'm from England.
She's from England. Okay.
I'm from England, UK, born in London, and so I was a total rebel at school. I didn't really resonate with the norm, the mainstream. So I never really entered the matrix willingly. Obviously, I was born into it, but I was just a rebel always. It was kind of like my soul fire was always just kind of nah, this is not it. This is not it.
Exactly.
So when I came out of education, I was I literally took off my shoes and traveled and went to the Rainbow Gathering and discovered all these alternative communities.
Wow.
And started living very freely.
This is at what age?
This was when I finished uni. So this was at 22.
And what did your parents think about that though? Because I don't know, anytime I see with really religious families, when you go against what they have taught you in the church, it's the parents always have some type of issue with that.
Well, my parents weren't actually that religious. They were loose Christians. But my nanny when I was 8 was the one who was really into Christianity. And she was the one who told me, you can pray anytime. And I was like, what? I can pray whenever I want?
Yeah,
this is fucking cool.
This is not what they teach you, yeah.
This makes sense, So my parents weren't that religious, but they were kind of conservative. My mom especially had a lot of issues with my lifestyle choices in my 20s. She was I joined the circus and didn't wear shoes and rode horses around Mexico, and she just couldn't understand, So that was kind of one of my big initiations spiritually, actually, was this relationship with my mother, which is very karmic, and which, I fought a lot with her. And that was a whole journey that, we ended up having a lot of deep healing many years later. But in between, I think I got the message when I was 21 and I was sitting on top of Stonehenge. Do you know Stonehenge?
Yeah, we went to Stonehenge
when
I was in when we were in UK. Yeah.
Okay, so
what's crazy about Stonehenge? When we were there, they had the how they have the things blocked off, so where you can't touch the stones. And so I remember before we went, I seen a retreat or some type of something where the people were actually there. Maybe they rented out the whole space and people were there leaning against the stones, and it was a normal thing. So I hopped over the fence and was man, I gotta touch the stone. I wanted to feel the energy. And when I did that, one of the workers was yeah, you gotta go. You know what I'm saying? And he told Tess, he's Yeah, the last person who did that had like bad luck or
Had
something.
their
like
head
that.
chopped off.
No, like had like bad luck for like 20 years.
Oh shit!
And like I'm like, get out of here! I'm like, people go there and like be you're one with nature. Like, what's the problem?
Yeah, they used to like, so this, when I was 21, it was like a solstice. So on the solstice, they would open up the barriers and you could go in and like do ceremony, and all the druids show up and like all the crazy hippies.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I was there at like just before sunrise, and I was sitting on the stones, and I got this download like, you need to release your attachment to your like human mother and dive into this connection with your real mother, with Pachamama, with like the mother of all. Like, this is your work now. And I was like, okay, that makes sense, because me and my birth mom were like fighting tooth and nail all the time. She wasn't supporting my spiritual evolution because she didn't understand it, because it wasn't her thing.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, then I got into ayahuasca, and I started drinking. Like, once I discovered ayahuasca, and I was invited to my first ayahuasca ceremony at Glastonbury Festival.
And where is this?
Glastonbury is like, some people call it the heart chakra of England. It's kind of close to Stonehenge. Sorry, the heart chakra of the world. It's kind of close to Stonehenge. It's connected to Avalon. If you ever heard of Avalon?
No.
It's like a mystical realm that is like native to the English land, to the area around Glastonbury. So I got invited from Glastonbury Festival, which was like a mud fest. You know, all these people freaking out about American festivals. They're like, it's going to rain, we all have to leave. In England, that's just normal. It's totally normal. Like, I'm walking around Glastonbury, there's like mud. I wore white skirts.
I've never been to a festival in my life either.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So there's like mud like all the way up my clothing. I'm not wearing shoes. I'm wearing like wedding dresses that are covered in mud, whatever. I get invited into this ayahuasca ceremony, which was straight after Glastonbury. So I literally felt like I got hauled out of the mud and put in an ayahuasca
And you
ceremony.
knew about ayahuasca before?
I didn't really know what it was.
But
like, I asked my friend, because she'd done it, and I was like, what is this? Should I do it? And I was like, it's really expensive. This seems like a lot of money. Like, is it worth it? And she was like, do it. And I trusted her.
And this is when was this?
This is when I'm like 23, maybe. 20.
So how many years ago was this?
Well, now I'm about to have my 40th birthday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Me too.
Really?
We're both tourists, right?
This
Mine's
May?
the 24th of April.
Oh, wow. So you're just before
I'll be 41.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're 1 year apart. Anyway, so this was like a long time ago. This was like almost 20 years ago.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So anyway, I basically got hauled out of the mud. I took a bath in my friend's house, and then I was like on ayahuasca. And somebody gave me like a white duvet. And like, after all the mud, like a week of mud, I'm like under a white duvet. And it was such a beautiful homecoming. I like sobbed.
Crazy.
Just like, I like went to heaven, basically. My first ceremony, I just went to heaven. Like, I went home to heaven, and I was like, this is. So then I trusted the medicine so deeply. So I would just basically drink with pretty much whenever I could.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really have a lot of discernment about shamans.
But in England, they were getting the medicine from Peru. I guess
I wasn't really that. I was drinking with Australian shamans. I was drinking with English. So they were getting the medicine from Brazil, from Peru, from wherever.
Wow.
That wasn't really my business. My thing was that I trusted this plant. Like, I trusted the spirit, because for me, and it's still the case, the spirit of ayahuasca is not really separate from mother, from Pachamama. Like, for me, it's very much one and the same. When I drink ayahuasca, I'm communing with her.
Mm-hmm.
So I trusted her, and I didn't really care who was serving me the medicine at that time. Later, I got a lot more discerning. I had some experiences where I was like, hold on a minute, you know, but at that time I was just like, this is, I was like a deep dive. I was like, let's go. This is the healing. This is the medicine. I'm ready. I have shit to do in this life. Let's go.
Let's get it going.
Deep, you know? So I did a lot of womb work. A lot of my ceremonies were very much like taking me straight into my womb. I went so deep with her on so many levels, into my own lineage, ancestry, past lives, collective feminine. Wow. I did a lot of work in like the collective feminine trauma. So I was working through traumas that like had never happened to me in this life, in the physical, but I was experiencing them as if they'd happened to me.
And you just knew that it was from a past life.
Some of it was past life stuff that I didn't understand until years later. Right? So I did a lot of other work, and it was like, oh, that's what it was. So a lot of it, it's like I've integrated since, but in the moment, I didn't know necessarily what it all meant, right?
So like, what is your view on like past lives and like reincarnation? Like what is your view on that? Because that gets interesting when people speak about these things, you know, like Do you believe that, like, each life you just incur more and more karma, or incur more and more, like, I guess, positive karma, and then the next life you relive things that you need to learn lessons? Like what is your view on it?
It's so funny because as you ask me this, I see the ankh in your earring.
Oh yeah.
And I'm so aware that I'm about to go to Egypt for the first
No.
time. Yeah, in like 2 weeks.
No way.
Yeah. And my
Man, I wanna go
biggest
to
past
Egypt.
life journey has been with a lifetime in Egypt.
Wow.
It sounds really cliche in a way. It's like, you know, oh, past lives in Egypt, you know, but it really has been. I've done quite a lot of past life work. So I've remembered quite a lot of, I say a lot. I believe I've had many, many, many more incarnations than what I've actually remembered, but there have been a few key pieces that I've remembered. And the biggest lifetime that has come up for me in past life experiences has been the one that I lived in Egypt. So I do believe in past lives. And I believe that based on our karma from past lives, we incarnate as a child. As a soul, we choose parents and we choose childhood experiences that relate to our karma in previous lives. So that karma from the past directly influences, let's say, the traumas or the experiences that take place in our childhood. And that is because it's our dharma as well as our karma. Like we have a curriculum.
Yeah, exactly.
In this incarnation, and we sign up for it at a soul level. We're like, okay, this is my work. These are my parents. This is the curriculum. Let's go. And then we forget that and we come into Earth and we're like, what?
Yeah.
And then we can fall into this trap of like, I'm a victim. This happened to me in my childhood. My parents were shitty. Da, 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 da. Or we can recognize that these lessons, because nobody escapes childhood without some trauma, right? But these are very deep experiences because you're so susceptible as a child, right? And so then the work, because from these childhood patterns, then we often create patterns in adulthood. So our work is to kind of unravel those patterns that we might start noticing in adulthood, and then we can track them back to childhood. And then from there, we can perhaps track them back to previous lives and understand that there are certain karmic threads that are playing through lifetimes and that we can choose to heal in this life so we don't continue to repeat the patterns.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I seen that too when I did ayahuasca for the first time. It took me to like experiences in my childhood that were traumatic that I didn't even know were traumatic. You know, and I was like, wow, like how could this medicine actually do that? It's just so crazy. So now you were saying it took you to your womb, like healing things in your womb that didn't even happen in this life.
Well, my womb was kind of the portal, you know, in my experience. Like I saw a lot of different things happen to different people on ayahuasca. But for me, in those early years, when I was doing my own deep dive, she always took me to the womb. Like that was the portal that opened up all the doors, that opened up all the stories. It opened up everything. And it was often the experience, like it wasn't always comfortable. It was often painful. It was like often like I was giving birth to myself. It was honestly like I feel like I've given birth so many times in this life on ayahuasca energetically. But through this pain in my womb, because it was often really pain was like the ayahuasca was shamanic, but then the pain was shamanic. And then, for example, when I was bleeding, I would have pain when I wasn't on ayahuasca, and that would also be a portal into different states of consciousness. So through the ayahuasca, I learned that my womb was a portal, and then I learned to access that portal when I wasn't on ayahuasca through pain, through my menstrual cycle, through sexuality, through pleasure, right? So I learned this magic, this alchemy of the womb and of eros, of sexual energy, and understanding how that could be a healing ingredient for basically anything.
Yeah. That's crazy. I never even thought about that. You know, and that's what brought you into the tantric space and the sexual awakening and all these type of things.
Yeah, that was kind of, I guess, like some of the early days. And then I was having experiences with lovers. Like I had a lover when I was 22 who was deep into Tantra. He was an Osho sannyasin. So he initiated me in some ways into some of the neo-tantric practices.
Neo-tantric practices.
Yeah, because you have like traditional Tantra, which is more like came out of India and has more ancient roots. I mean, it all has the ancient roots, but then neo-Tantra is more like Osho and other teachers and practitioners. It's more like modern Tantra, where it takes a lot of the ancient Tantra, but it gives it a modern
Let's talk about
spin.
Tantra
Okay.
for people that like might hear that term and not know what Tantra actually is. Like, what would be your definition of Tantra? It's not just foreplay.
No.
I mean, what is Tantra?
So I think a lot of people believe that Tantra is like, it's sex. It's to do with having like sex for a long time or having multiple orgasms, or it's very much about sexuality. And it is about sexuality. But for me, Tantra includes everything. So Tantra is like it's like an experiential journey in which sexual energy becomes a highway to higher states of consciousness, where sexuality and spirituality are one, where you bring together all these dualistic aspects of existence, masculine and feminine, light and dark, whatever it is, Shiva and Shakti, and you marry them. So it's about union. It's about bringing it all home to love within your own experience. So through tantric practice, you get to transcend your humanity and experience your divinity. That sounds really like, ooh, but actually a lot of Tantra is about diving deep into your shadows, into your wounds, alchemizing your emotions, actually feeling the trauma, because all of that gets stuck in your body. And then what tantric practice helps to do, and working with eros and working with breath and working with movement and working with sound, you move this trauma or this frozen emotion out of your body, which frees up the blockages and makes space for eros and life force to actually flow. Eros is like your sexual energy, but it's the energy of life, right? Like something is erotic energy. It's like your turn on, but it's the energy of life itself. So people think that it's limited to sexuality, but actually that life force moves through everything. You know, it's like nature is really erotic. You look at the jungle, you see like flowers blossoming, you see like all the sexuality in the nature and the plant life. It's something, it's an energy of creation that moves through all of us and moves through everything that is.
So if you didn't know about Tantra through meeting somebody, like how would you figure these things out?
Well,
it seems like how would like the kids that are growing up now, would you recommend that they in sex education class like talked about Tantra? Like, I don't know, like
yeah, nobody gets taught this stuff. That's why I do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm like, wow, like part of my service is that I give people the kind of sex education that I believe we should be taught in school, but nobody teaches us that. We get this really limited idea of what sex is or what sex can be. And a lot of it is surrounded in fear, right? Like you get told about STIs, about pregnancy, about like the dangers of sex, but nobody tells you about sexual energetics. Nobody teaches you the kind of basic tantric practices that, for example, the yoni egg practice, which I share a lot with women, which basically supports you to actually have an easeful menstrual cycle and be empowered within your cycle instead of a victim of it, and supports you to have multiple orgasms and like fully embody your orgasmic potential, as opposed to shut it down, which is what most women end up doing because they don't have the tools and they don't have the education. Same with men. It's like most men don't know that they can have an orgasm without ejaculating.
Yeah.
But this is the truth.
I know.
So a lot of it is about education.
Man, that's crazy. And like, so a basic tantric practice would be what? What would that be? Like eye gazing? Like what? Where do you start with these things? Because like a lot of people don't know anything about, these spiritual aspects of sex. They just think it's like one specific thing,
Well, I mean, eye gazing is a great practice. But the way that I like to share Tantra and introduce people to Tantra first is within themselves, because it takes the pressure off. You know, when you meet someone else, even if it's a long-term partner, you have expectations, you have habits, you have ways of relating, and you have all of that within yourself. But, often I work with one person in a couple that really wants to like get more tantric, but then they're like, how do I initiate the other one? And it's like, start with you. Start with you, work on yourself, work on your own healing, start to learn how to harness your sexual energy. So like a basic tantric practice is the yoni egg practice for women. So working with like a crystal yoni egg and actually learning how to work their pelvic floor and the muscles of their vagina so that they can actually like activate their yoni. Yoni means sacred temple in Tantric world. And, you know, most women are kind of disconnected from their yoni. So there's also like amazing practices for men where it's like a lingam massage, you know, actually learning to touch their genitals in a way where they've never touched their genitals because they've just learned from porn and they masturbate
without
in a
ejaculating though.
Yeah, like massage, like basically relating to them in a totally different way, which changes a lot. But then on a really basic level, Tantra can just be breath. So learning to like squeeze the pelvic floor and breathe. One good practice for men is like if they're peeing, to stop the pee in the middle of peeing, which helps them to connect.
That sounds painful.
It helps them connect that with their pelvic floor. So this helps control their ejaculation. So there's a million like beginner practices that you can do. And there's also books available. And like, if you're curious, there's a ton of stuff on the internet as well.
Yeah. I was just wondering, just for, I mean, I know I've come to a couple of your course, you know, your stuff, but like I just, for people that might not know that are watching, for them to kind of get like an introductory on like what we're talking about. And so at what point did you say, you know, I'm going to move to Costa Rica? Like what brought you here to the jungles? Because this is like, I'm from the States, it's right there. Like this is kind of far away from the UK.
To be honest, I get asked that quite a lot. And the real true answer is divine guidance. It was not on my radar. I never dreamed of living in the Caribbean. I went to the Caribbean a few times in my childhood, and I was like, it never even occurred to me that this could become home. It seemed too good. Like it was like, that is just a holiday place. That's like paradise. And, you know, after all these years of healing, or during all these years of healing, I really got to a place where I was like, I gave my life to the divine. I was like, use me. Like whatever you want to fulfill and manifest through me, I surrender to that. So I sort of trained myself to listen more and more deeply to where I was being guided, and to just do that, even when my ego protested, even when my mind was like, well, how is that going to work? You know? And it was one of those things where I was in London, it was COVID. I did this ceremony.
COVID, a lot of people made moves during COVID.
Yeah. I did this ceremony on the Great Conjunction, which was December 2020. On the solstice, and within a few weeks it was just, I got the guidance like, you're gonna go to Costa Rica. I knew nothing about Costa Rica.
What is the guidance? You know, like here's an example.
It's a really good question.
Some people, you know, like they'll get this amazing house, or they'll get like this thing that they've been wishing for, and they're like, the universe provided for me. Like what? Explain what do you mean?
I love this question. I think it's different for everybody. For me, the guidance comes from getting quiet enough to be able to hear from beyond myself, because the mind is always limited and just like, and dualistic, and sees the options that are obvious. But when you drop deep enough in your being, you're able to access this part of you that has more wisdom than that, the heart basically, and the soul. But the soul is very connected to the heart. So the more you drop into your heart, the more you're able to access a wisdom that goes beyond the obvious. And I think that it manifests for people in different ways. Like for example, when I got my cat, she walked into my life and I heard a voice say her name is Ishtara.
Like telepathy.
Like a voice, you know? And so sometimes it can be like that, but other times it's just like a knowing. It's a feeling in your body. Sometimes you just synchronistically, everybody keeps saying Costa Rica around you. And you're like, what is this, you know?
But you never, you had been here before?
No, I'd never been here. No, I literally just got on an airplane. I felt like a refugee. My flights were canceled several times.
Wow.
They were closing the airports. It was illegal to leave England. I made it here and I was like, I'll just go to this beach town for a couple of days and then like I'll travel Costa Rica and find like where I want to be. And this was the beach town and I never left. Like,
and you knew nobody here?
I knew nobody.
That's crazy. I never asked you that story. That's a crazy story.
Yeah.
That's a really crazy. I mean, like, usually
I had no plan.
When you're coming to Costa Rica and you're going to a beach town, the closest beach is Jaco. So usually people just go right there to the Pacific. It's super
that's
close.
The weird thing.
So I'm like, why would you come all the way here?
That's what everyone told me. They were like, well, then why? Because I literally Googled beach near San Jose. Because I was like, I'm not going to stay in the city. And Puerto Viejo appeared. And I was like, that looks cool. I'll go there because I was like, I need to decompress. I need to just like lay down on the sand for a couple of days. and then I'll go. But then as soon as I arrived here, I felt the energy and I just got high.
Wow.
I've done this huge journey. The bus ride, it was the longest time I ever did the bus ride. It was like 7-hour bus ride.
Yeah.
I got off, I was so hungry, but I just like felt the energy here and I was like, whoa. And then I ate tiramisu at the pizza place because that was all they would give me because they basically closed.
Yeah, during that time, a lot of things were closed.
Yeah, and then I went back and I like set up my room, which was this little bungalow, as if I was going to stay. It was just like subconsciously, I was like,
and you didn't go back to UK after that?
I've been back.
I mean, not back, but you never, once you came, you were like, I'm living here.
Well, yeah.
Wow.
But the thing is with me is,
you didn't plan on moving though. You just plan on taking a vacation at that time?
I didn't really have a plan.
You just like, yo, I got to get out of the UK.
I was ready to leave England. You know, I have not lived in England most of my life, but I was in a period there for like 5 years. My dad died. My grandma died. I was like, you know, just kind of like tying up a lot of karmic ends.
Yeah.
And it was like I came to this completion where it was like I knew I was done for now in London.
And what did your mom say?
My mom was in full support. Because I'd been there, I'd been like helping her, I'd been taking care of her, I'd like kept her sane through the whole of COVID.
Yeah.
She was like, okay, you got to go live your life, like do it, you know.
That's tough. That's tough. So wow, that's a crazy story. I never actually knew that story about you. Like I thought maybe you knew somebody because your tribe is so broad here. You know all these different people. So I thought maybe you knew somebody and then you came over here because somebody's referral to this area.
It was a real example of just like when you trust guidance. You know? Because when I came here, it's like this land received me so well. You know, some people kind of get spat out, you know, or go through like horrible initiations and get sick. And For me, it wasn't like that. For me, it was just like
smooth.
Everything, and I birthed my business.
Yeah.
You know, because I'd been on this huge healing journey. I mean, there's so many other things that happened in between, but I'd been on this, you know, very tantric journey in my inner life, my kind of private life, like not necessarily making it my work. And then once I got here, it was just like Kundalini Rose just like birthed out of me, and I started holding workshops, and it just became. A
lot of people do that.
Yeah,
a lot of people
it's like
come
fertile here.
Yeah, and they like whatever thing that they're interested in, or whatever they're like their gift is, they can flourish here. Like people want to pay for it here to get the knowledgeable experiences from other people. It's crazy.
It was also for me. It was really interesting. I felt like I was really ripe for it. And I think it's fine that a lot of people start teaching when they're still like 22 and they're really like still figuring it out.
Yeah.
And we're all still figuring it out all the time. But I felt like for me, I had done so much of the inner work. I'd really done the grind. I'd done like this descent into my own unconscious, into the collective unconscious. I'd really like walked the path myself. And I had all these like, you know, intimate tantric experiences. And, you know, my path of initiation was very tantric. It was very like all inclusive, you know, but there was this red thread that was really like the core for me. And once I came here, it was like, now you're ready to share it because you've integrated this. You're not just learning, you're not teaching it from a book.
You're living it. You're living it.
You're
and experiencing it.
Yeah.
So now it's like easier to give that information because you're like, I do this, I've done this.
Totally. And a lot of it for me was also this remembrance of I've done this before. Like I would read things like Osho had written, or I would learn a tantric practice, and it was like, wait, I already do this. Like this is in me.
Yes.
So a lot of it was about actually remembering from previous lives and from deep in my own being that I knew this already.
So like what can Tantra do to bring up trauma or heal somebody? Like how does that, can you explain that? Like how can that help somebody?
Well, when you're working with sexual energy, it's the most powerful force on the planet because it's the force of creation. Like it's the power to create life.
For sure.
So when you're working with that energy, you're working with a lot of power. And when you're working with that energy in connection with the heart, then you can access deep states of love, right? And so some women will have had the experience where like they have an orgasm and then they cry, right? It's like when you access certain states of feeling safe enough and open enough, then your wounds will naturally surface. Like healing just naturally starts to happen. It's like when the Kundalini rises, and you know, people experience the Kundalini rising in different ways. Sometimes it's really aggressive, sometimes it's really subtle, but like naturally this energy starts to alchemize the blockages, starts to move what's been stuck, so that you can basically free up space, so that Kundalini is able to move more freely. So it's kind of like this natural inner fire that is alchemical in and of itself. So when you start to cultivate it consciously, then it can basically, it's like a natural process where your wounds will start to arise, your patterns will start to arise. And the more you bring consciousness to it and you learn tools that can help you actively work with it, the more you can move energy. And one of the big things is emotional release. For men and for women, it's like most of the blockages in the body are emotional in some way, or related to sexuality or emotion. So when you start to work with sexuality practices by yourself or with your partner, and you start to dive deeper into this work, invoking your eros and bringing your consciousness to it, then it's like this crucible of healing that starts to happen in your being.
I think the basis of that, it seems like, is love.
Totally.
It's like when you're in tune with somebody and you guys are like getting into that love like energy, then maybe your body gets into a state where it's easier to like realize what's wrong or what's right and what you like, and then maybe it just balances you out. That's what
it's like a kind of opening, you know. It's like we contract because of trauma, we contract because of the world, because it's really hard to go through this world with an open heart. There's so many things that we have to like protect ourselves from. So and when we get hurt in love as well, we shut ourselves down without even realizing it sometimes.
Yeah.
So when you gradually start,
it's like a defense mechanism.
Exactly. Like people don't even realize, instead of boundaries, people have barriers. Like boundaries are healthy. Boundaries are like, hey, bro, don't cross this line with me. That's where I'm at. Somebody else might let you cross that line, whatever. But a barrier is like nothing's getting through. A boundary is like, hey, we can relate, but that's my line when it comes to that. But a barrier is just like, I'm shut down. Like I'm not going to risk the hurt that I might feel if I actually let you connect with me.
Yeah.
And so the opening is, it's like sometimes it's very delicate.
It's vulnerable too.
Super vulnerable. Tantra requires honesty and vulnerability first. Like it might seem glamorous and people are like, ooh, Tantra, yeah, like multi-orgasms and like I'll become an amazing lover or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but to get to that, you often have to go through the really sticky, icky, painful, vulnerable parts of you and love them to heal them. And then you make space for like all of this bliss and magic to come into your life.
And so when you mix the Tantra with the ayahuasca, you know what I'm saying? Like Tantra-waska, like how does that, you know, like what does that do for people? Yeah, exactly. Like how does that look, you know, because then it's like you're taking, like basically you took everything that happened to you and the way you healed in the process, and now you're incorporating it. It's like a whole thing that can like heal and teach and like bring up traumas all at the same time. Like how does that seems really, really extreme. Like coming from what you told me about your experience, seems like doing ayahuasca with Tantra at the same time would be like just a profound experience in itself.
If you told me that I was going to be doing this at various stages of my journey, I would have just been so mind blown. I would have been like, first of all, what? I'm going to co-facilitate ayahuasca ceremonies? But here's the piece that makes sense. It was like, for me, ayahuasca was always very erotic. It was very much, it took me to my womb. It took me to painful places, but it activated eros in me. It was like, it was sensual. My sexuality was very involved. And for some people, they go really out of body or like, you know,
me.
Yeah.
I went in for the first couple of ceremonies. I went inside, and then like some of them I was gone. I was out. So that's super cool that like people do ayahuasca and do these psychedelics, and it takes you where you need to go, you know, on your path in life.
Totally. And I'm like, I've always been super embodied. So I have had very spiritual experiences that for some people, they only have those experiences when they're out of body, but I have them and I'm still in the body. So that was my path, you know. And so I had a friend who we'd met, actually, we shared a lover when we were about 20. Actually, the one that initiated me.
When you say
Tantra.
share a lover, does that mean you guys had the same love at the same time?
We were in like an open relationship with this man who was into Osho and introduced us both to Tantra.
Osho is what?
Osho is like a famous tantric guru.
Oh.
And he was an Osho sannyasin, so he was like very connected to Osho's
Okay, so when you say famous tantric guru,
yeah.
When I think about a guru, the next thing I think about, I don't know why that pops into my mind, is like a cult leader or something like that.
Well, I mean, you should look up Osho, because there's even a series.
Like I could see him, everybody praising him.
Yeah, it was like that.
So he's like a cult leader.
He was kind of like, it got crazy. There's a series on Netflix. I forget what it's called, like Wild West or something. And it's like tells the whole story of his ashram.
I have to see that.
He had an ashram in India, and then he moved to America. He like
maybe I heard about this guy. What was his name?
Osho.
Osho.
You will have heard about Osho. He's like pretty talked about.
Okay, I'm gonna look that up.
Anyway, so we'd met at like age 20 and had this very tantric experience, and we'd both been, you know, young and on the path of Tantra. And we had an amazing sisterhood together. We loved each other deeply, and we'd kind of gone our separate ways. I'd got really into ayahuasca, and then later she'd got really into ayahuasca, because I took like a 10-year hiatus after I drank a lot. I was like, whoa, I was doing other shamanic work. I was like not really drinking. Meanwhile, she was drinking. We didn't see each other a lot. I had this crazy experience after I'd moved to Costa Rica, where I was in Ibiza trying out AOI, actually. And
we'll talk about that in a second.
And I flew back, and I didn't have a return ticket. I had COVID. I didn't even realize I had COVID. I was sick. I was like day one of my moon. And I was like,
in Ibiza.
On the flight. I get to Costa Rica, to immigration. They're like, where's your return ticket? I was like, oh shit, I don't have one. I'll just get one right now. They were like, no, you get back on the plane.
No.
They sent me straight back to Madrid.
Are you serious?
With COVID and
they didn't even let you book the flight right there?
No.
That's messed up.
Brutal. So I was like, this was a freaking disaster. Like, whatever.
That's messed up.
Get back to England. I can't even get back on another plane, because I go to take the COVID test, because it was still that time. And they're like, you have COVID. You can't fly.
That's messed up.
So I'm in England, quarantined. And this friend of mine from back then is like, I see on Instagram that she's in England. And I'm like, we've been like in different countries for years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God. So we meet. And she had her story is so amazing, but basically she had fallen in love with a Brazilian man who came very direct from the Santo Daime lineage. So,
and that's
Santo Daime is like the church, the ayahuasca church in Brazil.
Oh.
So he'd come from, and he'd like kind of was leading an offshoot of Santo Daime. So it was like therapeutic ayahuasca, but it came from the Santo Daime, which is more like, it's a different way of drinking. You stand, you dance, you sing hymns. It's connected to Christianity more than like the shamanic. Anyway, so she had a 7-year journey with this man who was an incredible teacher and healer and led hundreds of ceremonies. They'd done hundreds of ceremonies around the world. And he had died during COVID really tragically. Of COVID, he had a pre-existing condition. So they built I get goosebumps every time I talk about it.
Sucks, man.
They built a retreat center in Brazil, and she'd basically taken over, and she was now serving ayahuasca. So previously she'd been doing the music, but she was now serving ayahuasca and doing the music, and basically taking on his mantle and continuing the work.
You know what's crazy about COVID, man, is like, you know, here, like a lot of people are like, oh, it's fake, you know, whatever. But people died, man.
Yeah, totally.
People died from this stuff. And then now it's just gone.
Well, people are still getting COVID.
Yeah, but like nobody, you know, like.
It's a whole rabbit hole. But basically, Millie is her name. So we met in England, and we went for a walk in the forest. And
this is at this point when you meet her, the guy already passed away.
Yeah, he'd already passed away. I hadn't seen her for 13 years.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So in all of that time, she'd met him, fallen in love, done 700 ayahuasca ceremonies around the world with him, and he died.
Oh man!
And so we met and we talked, and they had always had a vision to do tantrahuasca, because they were living this experience of a totally tantric union and serving ayahuasca all the time. So it was just constantly merged for them. And so she told me about it, and as soon as I heard the word tantrahuasca, it was like my whole body was just like,
you were like, that's what it is.
and it was like just weaving between us. It just was like a co-creation. And we decided to start with just women. And honestly, it's so profound. So you asked, what is it like?
Yeah.
It's
I was
like,
just like wondering like what type of, you know, experience that would be.
It is like what we just talked about, that healing that is like this total opening, that is this total softening, that is this total permission. It's like creating so much safety here in the jungle. Where women and doing these tantric embodiment practices, working with erotic energy, working with sound, breath, movement, and working with the medicine, but with like just 10 women in a really intimate space where me and Millie are like holding you so strong, you know, so you can go anywhere, like you're really able to go where you need to go, and you know the medicine takes you where you need to go. So the women who come out, they're just so lit with their own radiance and power and beauty. Like everyone looks so beautiful by the end of the week. It's just like,
so
wow.
when they're doing that, where does the tantra come into play during the ceremony?
So we're doing ceremonies all week, not always with the medicine, with the plant medicine. So we're doing sort of embodiment work practices all the time. But then, so sometimes we'll do a ceremony where they'll receive a microdose, and then we'll lead them in embodiment practice. And then they'll receive another dose, and then we'll lead them in a practice. And then once they're really deep, then they're really deep. But in the beginning, it's like a little bit of medicine, and then working with a practice that will like really move energy. And in the end, it's like these women, they like rebirth themselves and they midwife each other. It's like this collective rebirthing that happens.
That's crazy.
It's profound. And they're healing ancestral stuff, and they're healing personal stuff, and they're exposing themselves in the most beautiful way, like true intimacy, vulnerability, like sharing their truth in ways that maybe they never have with anybody before.
Yeah. I feel like now at this time, this day and age, like this is the time to like clear that karma, heal those traumas, and you know, set a different example for the next generation, so that when we reincarnate, if we do reincarnate, like it's a different path. You know, it's not having to do the same things that we've been doing for years and years and years.
It feels critical, honestly. And I feel like I've always like had this energy since I was like literally a baby, of like my eyes were just like, I'm here on a mission. And I feel like this is a very critical time for humanity. And that healing, you know, it's like we have war on this planet. It's such a big topic right now.
It's crazy.
And that is so much to do with our collective shadow, and not, you know, unhealed individuals, and a big unhealed humanity. For sure. And there's little pockets of areas where people are, you know, healing and holistic and spiritual. But I mean, we need some spiritual healing. Some spiritual warfare going on. And it's like, planet. I always say to like clients, students, friends even, it's like, do not underestimate the power of the work that you're doing individually, because you don't understand with the mind how deep it ripples and how much it affects. And that's why I'm doing these podcasts as well, because I want to get my network of people to see, you know, the people that I meet that live here, the powers that, you know, we all have as human beings, and what we can do to heal each other and help out humanity, you know, in the whole grand scheme of things. So tell me, talk to me about light healing. Light healing. You know, with the AOI machine, like how, like for a normal person, any of my friends in the United States of America, they're thinking light. Like, bro, how does that heal you? Like, can you get into like the little bits of how that can help heal a human being, like physically, spiritually, mentally? Like, so I have this healing machine, AOI, which is basically, it's a light and sound therapy. So it's working with light, it's also working with sound, so it's working with frequency. And so one way that you could think of it is that light is like a superfood. You know, people are into their superfoods, their spirulina, the foods that make them feel really like pumped, you know? And light is basically like, the body can feed on light, you know? Like I always noticed that when I'm in the sun, you know, growing up in England, there wasn't a lot of sun. And then when I would go to a place where it was full sun and I would like bathe in the sun, I was like, I'm not as hungry. You know, it's like it feeds you.
It does do that.
Yeah. And so the way that AOI works is that it's a specific light code. So it's a specific series where the color and the intensity and the speed of the change of color activates this healing in the body. So it's like our bodies are self-healing, you know, it's like you cut yourself, they know how to heal. But this kind of stimulates that, and it creates an environment where that self-healing can happen. Kind of like the tantric practice can help you to open the light, because you absorb it through the skin. You know, you stand in this thing naked, and it's like it's penetrating your whole body through the full surface area of your skin. And it activates your DNA. So you have these telomeres in your DNA. It's like these like strands, and they get like frayed, like split ends. And somehow this light is able to mend those split ends so that your DNA actually heals. And it sort of propels you towards your potential. So I've seen so many different kinds of experience. It's kind of like ayahuasca.
Yeah.
She takes you where you need to go, and it's different for everyone. And it's AOI is like that. I like to see them as like almost like complementary masculine and feminine. You know, the Aya, she comes from within. She's like a serpent. She moves you from inside. And AOI penetrates with light. It's like the masculine.
That's just crazy.
And
like,
together, it's a mean combination.
You know what amazes me too? The infrared like light therapy. I have like a knee machine right now.
Oh yeah.
That my dad told me about. Yeah, they can to like help me with the tendonitis in my knees from playing basketball. And there's like it massages the knee, and then there's like an infrared light in the machine that supposedly like penetrates and heals and breaks up scar tissue. So like, and then I remember with the machine, it was like all these different all these different lights, and I'm just like, wow, like me, I'm like, how does this actually help?
Right.
But so it's crazy to hear you talk about that. It's just, so what the light is doing is it's acting like the sun. Like, what are they? How are they? How like?
It's more specific. Like, it's funny because you should come and do a session for your knee. Seriously, I had a 75-year-old woman. She had a chronic knee issue, knee pain. And she did one session and it was gone. That's and it never came back. She was very intentional. She was like, this is for my knee. I want to heal my knee. And she came out. She's like, it's gone. She came back for many sessions. And every time I was like, how's your knee? Did the pain come back? She's like, no, it's done. So it's just like evidential in a way. But, there was something I was going to say about the light and the way it works. And
yeah, I was asking like this, how does it, because the sun has, I guess, a certain...
Oh yeah, that was it.
Yeah, like how do they do that?
So Johnny Dar, who invented this thing, so in the years after my 20s, I was extreme hippie doing loads of ayahuasca and all of that. I met Johnny Dar and I started working with him, and I worked with him for about 13 years. We're still working together, but in a different capacity, and he created AOI. So I know the full story behind this machine, which is why I trust it more than, like, people always say to me, oh, but I have this light therapy, and oh, is it like XYZ? And I'm like, this is different.
Yeah, like I have a friend that I know through Tessa in Osara who has like a light machine too.
Right. There are people with light
shines
machines
over your like eyes, and it's like crazy light machines. Like so light has these codes
properties,
and these things that we don't understand. Like,
but then there's different codes. And so Johnny received the codes for AOI actually 20 years before he created AOI. But he is very guided individual, and he wasn't guided to actually create the machine, as we called it in the beginning, until COVID happened. So that was a really interesting synchronicity. That was why I was in Ibiza that time, because he literally calls me. He's like, you need to come to Ibiza. I've created a machine. And I'm like, but I'm in Costa Rica. But like, I know your machine's going to be good.
Yeah.
So I went all the way to try it, And the difference, as I understand it, I think there are many differences between the different light therapies. And I think a lot of them work and have a lot of benefits. But AOI is full spectrum. So whereas red light is just red light. And you have 7 layers to your skin, and each layer corresponds to a different color, a different frequency, a color vibration. So with red light, you're kind of targeting one layer, so you're targeting like one aspect, but then the other 6 are kind of neglected. So when you have like full spectrum, then you are actually addressing the full spectrum of the healing that needs to happen. And it's not just a question of like, oh, so if I blast a rainbow at me, is that going to work? It's like, no, this is a code I don't know how to explain it because I'm not very mathematical.
You know what just ran through my mind?
It's a code.
What ran through my mind was like when the light is coming through from the sun, you know, and say for example it just rains, like you just said, rainbow, it just rains, and then like the light's shining through. What's happening is like the water is creating the rainbow. Right. Am I correct about that? So like you're seeing colors shine through because of the water, and like those are the same colors that are in the machine. You see what I'm saying? So like I'm like, does this have to do with like water and like solar energy, and like this is like what we really should see if it was like under the right circumstances, we would just see rainbows all over the place.
It was really interesting you're picking up on that because you know the chakra system. Yeah. Right? I mean, in Tantra, you work a lot with the different chakras, and it's like this is an energy system where each chakra has a color. Again, it's a frequency. Yeah. And each color and chakra relates to certain things, certain topics. So we actually we're made up of colors, and we're also mainly water. So we're made up of these frequencies, but what happens in the way Johnny describes it is we end up losing our color. So when, you know, like your beautiful boy, like you are a baby, you come in with all your colors. That's why babies look so fresh, and we're just like, oh, because they're just like, they've got all their colors. And then as you grow up, you don't realize, but you actually start to lose you give away your colors. It's like you give away your power without even realizing, to the government, to the situation, to the boss, to the da-da-da-da. In the same way, you're actually giving away your colors energetically. Like you can't see this, but if you were looking energetically, you would see it. Yeah. And you know how old people get kind of gray? They get like hunched because of all their experiences that they're carrying, and they get like literally gray because they're like losing their colors. So what AOI does is it actually feeds your colors back to you. So when you're in that thing, you're able to connect with your power. You're able to connect with like your wholeness, your essence in a way that is hard to do in like normal waking life. Because we've got so many demands on us, and our energy is in many places, and our mind is going and whatever. Yeah. In AOI, it brings you this peace and this stillness, and it feeds you your colors. So you're actually able to recharge. It's literally like a rejuvenation machine. Wow. And come back to like on a physical cellular level, you're healing. And you're also able to, on a spiritual level, really hear your own, let's say, guidance. Really hear the wisdom of your soul. And so the color piece is just, it's like one aspect of it, but it activates
other
so
things.
Much more. Yeah.
It's crazy. Like unless you're here or not here, or unless you're living this lifestyle, like these type of things, can they help? You know, somebody who's working a 9-to-5 job?
Definitely.
Oh, they can.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing it.
These type of things will make you want to quit your 9-to-5 job.
Well,
you see what I'm saying?
That may be the case. I know people, it's like AOI is like super popular in Berlin and in Dubai, where people are living like a very different lifestyle to what we're living here. And I feel like everybody has their own soul purpose, their own dharma, their own karma, and their own dharma.
And dharma means what?
Dharma is like your divine purpose in a way. It's like the path you're here to walk. It's like your service to the world. But it's really hard to get to your dharma if you haven't addressed your karma. And sometimes you might be in a karmic relationship, and through the work you do, you switch it into a dharmic relationship. Yeah. You know? It's like they can be mixed.
Like almost like you. Like not the relationships you've been in, but just your lifestyle has led you to clear up karma and different things to now you're living your life's path.
Totally. Exactly. So they're very connected. Nice. But so some people, their dharma, I believe, is really like to like live off grid and be the alternative community and be like anchoring the new world this way, you know? And then some people, their dharma is more to have like a foot in both. You know, where it's like maybe they're in the matrix even because they need to bring that consciousness. Yeah. Those are the ninjas. Yeah. That's what I did for many years before I moved out here. You know, I was in London. I was like working in multiple industries of the entertainment industry, working with Johnny, you know, like bringing healing arts to people that were in the matrix. Exactly. Because we're all in it together. Yeah, we're all in it together. We got to bring it to those people too. So I think it depends on who you are and what your dharma is as in terms of like what you're going to be guided to. But what you're going to be guided to is your own truth. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Nice. Nice. Well, nice conversation. Great question. We could talk forever. I know. But I'm going to let you go. Yeah, we could talk forever, but nice. I just want to give people like a good understanding
of healing, you know, and you're one aspect of that, just because of the tantra, the sexual healing, which is very, very, very important. A lot of people are sexually traumatized and don't even know what sex really is. And then, you know, with the ayahuasca, you know, that's a psychedelics is frowned upon in the United States. It's you know, it's a drug, but these things actually heal. And I think that the reason that a lot of these things are illegal or are not talked about is because it frees your mind up to where you can't be controlled anymore. And then you want to start living your dharma, which is not going to be in a call center all day. So these are the type of things that try to keep people, you know, weighed down and stressed out so they don't come and experience these things over here. And so I want to give people an understanding that we are actually here experiencing these things, and it's a real life path that, you know, can lead you to a better place spiritually, you know?
I love that. And, you know, it's sovereignty. It's
Yes.
like when you reclaim your body, you reclaim your colors, your energy, your life force, you know, on a tantric level, that's the whole point. And then you're fully sovereign. You're able to be your own master or mistress, make your own choices free from the conditioning. And
it's cool.
Everyone deserves that.
It's cool because, like, with my son, for example, like, he's going to grow up a totally different way. Like, sexual education is going to be, when he's 10, 11, 12 years old, he's going to be with you.
Yeah.
He's going to be with you, like, with a bunch of other kids, like, learning these things so that the next generation can take a different path and be just, like, a different world, you know?
That's really the dream. You know, that's my dream, is that it becomes like that. And it's the kids are learning these things, and they don't have to clean up the same amount of shit that we do because we did it for them. Yeah.
Nice, yo. Nice talking to you.
Thanks, Gilly. That was a really good interview.
Yep. Welcome to the Love Podcast. My friend here, I'll put all her information in the details. So if you want to follow her Instagram page or sign up for any of her retreats, we'll keep you posted. Peace,
Come on down.
Nice show. Nice.
Wow, that was